Hello and welcome to Season 4 of our Parallel Paths, a future for my loved one with a disability and for me. I'm your host, Gerry, Dr. Geralyn Arango Deeley, and this podcast is about just what the title says, the parallel paths of family members, certainly parents, sometimes siblings as parents age or pass on, and their loved ones with intellectual disabilities. I'm a parent myself, and I always have questions. Our parallel paths is about nurturing and supporting ourselves as we nurture and support our loved ones with intellectual disabilities. Our roles as family members are ever-changing, and they're evolving alongside our loved ones, so there's more than one path, more than one future to talk about, and that's why we're here. I hope the stories and perspectives of my podcast guests and me give you hope, information, and ideas for your path. So I'd like to first give a Season 4 shout out to Networks for Training and Development, who have given me this tremendous opportunity to invite in and listen to people like you and me, connected somehow to the parallel paths of families of adults with intellectual disabilities. I have had the opportunity to talk to parents. I have talked to siblings. I've talked to supports brokers, to advocates, and every now and then I give you a little update on our path at our house, or some ideas about the path from me. I hope that you'll keep coming back to the podcast because I love bringing it to you as we travel the parallel path and take care of ourselves too. Knowledge is power, so thank you, Networks. So let's get started on today. I wanted to say, as you probably know, that there are universals to being family. There's the love. There are the challenges. And some kind of eventual, quote-unquote, letting go as our loved ones, our children, our siblings, whoever, move into the adult world, right? But there are also unique stories and challenges when your son, your daughter, your sibling, your loved one experiences disability. How do you let go in that case? When do you let go? Can you ever let go? Not that typical families fully ever let go either. But how can we help our loved ones learn interdependence and not be ourselves overwhelmed by all of the pieces that go into it? I mean, there are new systems to navigate when the IEP is over, sometimes even before the IEP is over. Those exciting but, nervous transition years before the IEP gets put away for good. It has always hit me hard that just as families move away from the school district, from the IEP, all that angst, we may not be done. As a matter of fact, we families often need to rally one more time to eat our Wheaties or 5 bowls of Wheaties and get ready, all of us, in my case, Nick, me, his sister, even his stepfather, to transition to adult life where you are no longer entitled, as it says in IDEA, but you have to qualify for the services that our loved ones need. Families have to retool after the K-12 plus years and learn to engage with new systems, Social Security, the county intellectual disabilities entity, whatever yours is, the medical changes if your loved one comes off your health insurance at 26 like Nick just did, fun, how to keep records, how to comply, so that you don't lose what you qualified for. Different agencies that might be providing some of the services, I'm not done yet, money management and keeping our loved ones' money under the radar so you don't lose benefits, systems that just really don't seem to talk to each other as well as you wish they did, or maybe they don't have a lot of understanding of what the other one does, and if there are areas where they might dovetail, that makes me crazy because families need information from trusted sources. Families need support from trusted sources and from each other. Because, me, not getting any younger and don't think my brain's getting any sharper, so help. The good news is there is help out there, and you may likely already have it. The role of today's guest can and should provide major help in the form of what's called supports coordination, sometimes service coordination, depending on where you are. I am excited to welcome today's guest, Jessica Fenton. Jessica is a supports coordinator and director of Miracle Works, a supports coordination organization in Pennsylvania, or actually supports coordination organization, and I might say, a little jargon, an SCO. Chances are, if you are a family member and you're listening to the podcast, you have a supports coordinator, ta-da, or somebody with that job, if it goes by another name in your state. Somewhere in your world, there is a supports person. I wanted to specifically invite Jessica to the podcast because she has experience working for the county, as well as experience directing her own agency. And that's a depth of experience I'm interested in, because I'm always concerned, about, am I doing enough? Am I doing it right? Who can help us here and now? I mean, Nick and I have been through our share of supports coordinators and supports coordination organizations through the years. So I know how essential supports coordination services are, and I'm guessing you do too. I'm curious to deepen my understanding of the role of the supports coordinator, as well as to learn more about what I can do to get the most out of our working relationship, because my brains need to work with other brains. So, welcome, Jessica Fenton, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Hello, Gerry. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Yay. Could we maybe, for the sake of whoever's listening and where they're at with stuff, could we start with some working definitions?
Sure.
Because my first question is, how would you define supports coordination?
Okay, so supports coordination is basically, a supports coordinator is going to be your team leader. They're going to locate services for you. They're going to coordinate those services, and then they're going to monitor those services. The supports coordinator facilitates the team. They're the person you go to when you need funding. They're the person you go to when you need referrals to in-home support agencies, employment agencies, residential needs. So they're always going to be your touchstone in the system.
Okay. They also are people who I know adjust some of the budgetary
absolutely
items.
Yeah, the supports coordinators are going to look over your budget. They're going to make sure everything fits within your budget, different waivers. And we'll talk about what waivers are, but different people have different budgets. So they have to make sure that all of your needs fit into that budget. And if there are additional needs, they're going to be the ones that contact the county, let them know about your needs, and get you on a waiting list for additional funding.
Okay, because I get kind of stiffened at the word budget because I didn't know it in my real life. So now not that I have so much money, but that I just never budgeted anything. And so it's kind of a new piece for me to always be mindful of, even though you may be under your waiver, you still have to kind of account for what you're spending so that you don't go over, but also so that you're making sure that you're using it well. And
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things you had touched on in your intro was entitlement versus a needs-based system. So this is a needs-based system. It's not an entitlement system. So everything's based on needs, not wants. Mm-hmm. Somebody may want 80 hours a week, but in reality, the consumer may only need 40 hours a week. So you have to make sure that you show that there is a need, and you have to make sure that you utilize that. If you're asking for a certain amount of hours and you never use them, then most likely a supports coordinator is going to go in and they're going to lower it, because that's not a real need if you're never utilizing that service you have in the plan.
Okay. Because, that's where I always think, how am I doing? And I have to keep looking back at what we'll talk about later, the ISP, to see what kind of hours we even are authorized for and how close I got to them.
Yep.
And I realized that I'm only 1 hour under, right now.
That's fantastic.
Which might also mean that, if I have new ideas, I need to come to you and say, I need to bump up the hours or something like that. And then you talk to the county and say...
Yes, we would put in that. It's called a critical revision. For adults in our system, our plan is not an IEP. That's for children, coming K through 12. We have an ISP, which is Individualized Support Plan. So if there's a new need, we put that in and we take it to the county, which is the administrative entity, and they will either approve it, ask for more information, or deny it, which in most cases they don't, because there's always, there's usually a need. I don't really find that families ask for things that are frivolous at all.
Okay. I that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, all right. So that's good to know, and to sort of be able to be confident in the fact that if I ask for it, chances are I may well get it. But I have to ask for it.
Absolutely.
All right.
You have to use your voice.
Okay.
And if we don't know that there's a need there, you're never going to get it served.
Okay. So now, again, a little more vocab here. Waiver. We talk about waiver. What's waiver?
So, waiver is a term that I believe came up in the 80s. So back a long time ago, in the 60s and 70s, unfortunately, most of the people with intellectual disabilities were served in institutions. And in the 80s, they came out with these Medicaid waivers. Okay, so it's funded through Medicaid, that you're waiving your right to an institution. So that's where the name waiver comes from. You're waiving your right to an institution, and instead you're going to be served in the community. So that's where the name waiver comes from. Now, the money attached to waivers differ. There are currently in the IDA system 3 different waivers. There's a PFDS waiver, which stands for Person Family Directed Services. That currently has a cap of $41,000 a year. Then there's the mid waiver. The mid waiver came out, I would say, definitely within the last 10 years. That's called the Community Living Waiver. Most people will say CLW. And that currently has a cap of $85,000, which is a great waiver for most of the families. Find their niche in that waiver and are able to serve their family member very, very well under that waiver. And then there's the top tier waiver, the Cadillac of waivers, and that is the consolidated waiver. And that is a non-capped waiver. So consolidated waiver has to serve all of your needs. Again, it has to be a need and not a want. You don't want to just add services that aren't needs, but that waiver is not capped. That's basically the waiver that you want if somebody has to move into a group home residentially, because group homes are extremely expensive. So there are the 3 different waivers, and that's where the name waiver comes from.
Thank you. I always think about that as like waving that institution goodbye.
That's right. Goodbye, institution. Hello, community.
But yeah. And I mean, in our case, Nick not moving into a group home, I remember them saying, "Oh, you have community living waiver. You're done." And I said, "I'm a widow. My daughter is at the time, is in the military. If something happens to me, what happens to him?" And that was how I sort of made the case to keep going up and up and up.
Absolutely.
And so it enables Nick now to be able to live in the condo and all that good stuff, because I still kind of hold my breath as what happens if I die tomorrow.
Right.
And as much as we work on putting things in place, this being in place somewhat at least is a huge comfort. But it was not without, a lot of, hey, I need it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's wonderful. And I think that's where this podcast comes in handy for a lot of parents, because you can learn to be your own advocate. You have to use your voice. You have to advocate for needs that are going to be coming down the road. The state has a system called PUNS, which is you'll hear that all the time if you're looking for additional services. That's an acronym as well. There's a ton of acronyms in this system.
Prioritization of urgent needs, status, or something like that. Yeah.
So the PUNS is basically, layman's term, that's the waiting list. So there's an emergency PUNS, there's a critical PUNS, and there's a planning PUNS. If you don't advocate for your loved one to say what their needs are going to be, you're not going to be on that waiting list, and then you're not going to get the waiver that is going to best fit your needs. So I strongly advocate, advocating for your loved one, because you want to make sure that they're getting all that they need and that you're planning for it.
Yeah. And I mean, alas, I have come across parents who are wonderful advocates, and I have come across parents who are truly overwhelmed and exhausted. And that's, the person I kind of hope is listening, because if this little podcast can fill in some of the gaps to saying, you know what, I got to make that phone call, and this is what's on the other end. Then maybe I've done my job on that, because there are so many stories out there, but there are these entities that can be of help if you use them.
Yes. And be honest. You don't want to go and say, oh, sure, everything's fine. We're good. Don't worry about us. No, tell them what the needs are. Tell them the hard time that you're having. Tell them the issues that have arisen, any behaviors that are coming. We need to get the full picture so we can help you the best that we can.
Okay. And you don't necessarily come on board in adulthood. I mean, Nick's supports coordination started much younger, unfortunately, because of behavior issues. But
So supports coordination. You can start to get a supports coordinator. I believe now that you can get it as young as 5. Usually, you can come in right from the early intervention system and get a supports coordination, but you're not going to most likely get services.
Right.
It would be supports coordination only. And that basically rides you up until the time that you graduate, whether it's 18 or 21. And then you would go into the waivers. So you're going to be supports coordination only, that you have an SC that checks in with you every 6 months, see how things are going. They will still write that ISP. It's an annual update. They get all the updates so they can prepare you for the time when your loved one graduates or turns 21, that we can get you a waiver and get you services. So hopefully for all those that are under 21 and in the state of Pennsylvania, they already have a supports coordinator. If you don't, reach out to your local county office and get registered so you can at least have supports coordination only to get yourself prepared.
Okay. So that first step is reaching out to the county.
Absolutely. You want to reach out to your county program. And
which changes acronyms every few years.
Absolutely. It does change acronyms. But, in the southeast region of Pennsylvania, there's, Delaware County, Montgomery County, Philadelphia County, Bucks, and what did I miss? Delco? Did I miss Delaware? Did I say
that's the first one you said.
Oh, it's the first one I said.
Because that's
Chester
where
County.
you are. Yeah,
Oh,
Chester
County. Oh, I'm sorry, Chester County. I missed you for a minute there.
Nice as it is.
But they're all called AEs, administrative entities. So you want to reach out to your county administrative entity and get registered.
Okay. And like I said, it goes. I mean, when I first started, I think it was OMR.
It was OMR when I started as well.
OIDD and whatever.
Yeah, then it was OID. Now it's OIDD.
Yeah. So
for Delco. So in different counties, in Philadelphia County, they call it IDS.
Okay.
Intellectual Disability Services. In Delaware County, they call it OIDD now. And I'm not sure. I believe in Chester County, it's the MHMR program. Or maybe it's what it used to be. I'm actually not sure. I can't keep up with the acronyms.
Yeah, but that one should have been wiped away.
Yeah, I think actually it was. But So like I said, they call it different things in different counties.
Okay. I just keep thinking about, all right, so if I don't know, do I just Google intellectual disabilities services or something like that?
I would.
Yeah.
I would. I can try to put up on my website as well the different contact information, but it's usually pretty easy to find.
Okay. I just think about the parent who's going, wait, what? When they're getting a diagnosis or whatever. Yeah. So
actually, that's a great question, and I have my iPad with us, so I'm going to just do a little Google search myself, and let's see what comes up.
Okay. One moment, please.
Okay, so I just did a quick Google search. I put Intellectual Disability Services, Delaware County, PA, and immediately the Delaware County Department of Human Services came up, and it gets you right into their intellectual and developmental disability link.
All right.
So you should be able to do a quick Google search. I would put in Intellectual Disability Services and your county, and then the state of PA, because there's different there's a million Montgomery counties within all the states.
Right. And then
the US.
Is this supports coordinator a term that you'd see in more than Pennsylvania? Is this the name and then what they do kind of?
It is. It seems to be. I have limited knowledge about that, but from what I have researched, it seems to be fairly similar throughout the states. And like you said, some people call it supports coordination and some people call it service coordination. So that does seem to be the current vernacular. Before it was supports coordination, it was called case management. So I'm sure there might be some states out there that still use that, or there might be some, I still have some family, old school families, and they still say case manager instead of supports coordination. But most of them are either supports coordinator or service coordinator.
Okay. And do states have waivers? All states? Or...
That's a great question. I believe that they do.
Okay.
But I can't speak to every state in the union.
Of course. I just kind of wonder in case there's anybody out there who's not Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's not, I mean, we've got a waiting list, but Pennsylvania tries.
They do try.
Seems like Pennsylvania tries.
Absolutely, they try. From every other state that I've ever looked into, I've seen that they do have similar waiver programs.
All right.
But always remember that your waiver program does not transfer state to state. So, for instance, in the state of Pennsylvania, if you move county to county, you're going to take your waiver with you. If you move from Philadelphia County to Carbon County, that waiver is going to go with you. If you move from Delco to Pittsburgh, that waiver is going to go with you. But if you move from Philadelphia to the state of Delaware, you lose that. If you move to the state of Georgia, you lose that. It does not transfer out of state.
Yeah, you get back onto their waiting list.
Absolutely. And then you have to go through whatever their state process is.
That's a big deal.
Huge deal.
Because Nick will live his whole life in Pennsylvania, essentially, which is fine. But I know his sister was feeling bad because she just got out of the Navy and was living in Virginia and moved to Maryland. She said, I should have moved to Pennsylvania.
Oh.
And I was like, no. But, she thought about it. And so, we don't want to go, that's a whole different conversation, but that's just important to know is that your Pennsylvania waiver is Pennsylvania specific.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, if you do want to transfer state, look into what their waiting list is. Look into their process before you move. There are some states that are really good. Like I said, I can't speak to other states' processes, but I do know that the state of Delaware does have a good reputation for serving their clients, but there might be other states out there that aren't. So look at what that other state has to offer, how long their waiting lists are, and then you can balance the pros and the cons and see from there. But it's a pretty good bet to move county to county and try to stay in PA.
Yeah.
If you have the Cadillac of waivers, you really
want to stay. Yeah. And I am driving a Cadillac right now, so I'm going to keep my car. We're keeping this one. All right. So and then the waiver, that's kind of common. An ISP, first, is that another, acronym that would be what you'd hear across different states?
I believe it is as well. Again, I very limited knowledge, but from different things that I've looked up when I was reviewing policy, I would see something from Minnesota or something from Oregon. So anything that I've ever come across, they do say ISP. So I do believe that is a pretty common vernacular. Okay.
And since we've got this one that shows up either after the IEP is over or during, and like I said, as a parent and as a former classroom teacher and even as a professor, when I talked about an IEP, we talked about goals and objectives. And now when I look at an ISP, my mind is still going goals and objectives and my eyes are reading outcomes. And so my question there is, as we are, working on an ISP, and we are working on it next Friday, actually, at this time. It's our annual. What's the difference how are we to read this differently? And what are the areas of overlap, actually?
Yeah, it's tricky. A lot of supports coordinators that have been around for a long time still have trouble with it. A lot of direct support service professionals have trouble with it. Goals are part of outcomes. So a support person might work on specific goals with someone like Nick in order to reach his outcome. So the outcome is the overall thing you want to happen, and the goals are what get you there. So Nick's outcome could be something, and this is, just overly simplified, but, Nick wants to live independently in his home and be successful. So that's the overall outcome. But his goals are still going to be money management and community integration and socialization and household chores, doctor's appointments. He's still he's going to need to work on all those goals in order for him to achieve living independently.
Okay. So it's almost like in an IEP, a goal and an objective is now an outcome and a goal. So the word goal moves.
Yes. But I mean, stay tuned, Pennsylvania, because that might change. Again, a word on the street is that we might be going back to goals. I have no idea if that's going to happen or not, but I know our system is changing. As supports coordinators, we work in something called HCSIS. HCSIS is going away. It's been around for 20 years.
HCSIS is going away?
HCSIS is going away.
Where is it going? And who's going to take its place?
I know. I hope we could still access it.
And then what's HCSIS? Tell us what's HCSIS.
So HCSIS is Home and Community Information System. Is HCSIS. Home and Community Services Information System. That's what HCSIS stands for. And HCSIS is the online system where all your supports coordinators put in their service notes about what they did with you for the day. Supports coordinators have to do monitorings. Very important. Make sure your supports coordinators are monitoring your services so that they can ensure that you're getting good services. And that is part of the waiver. So I've heard that, sometimes some people aren't getting monitorings, and if you're not getting monitorings, you definitely should. But back to HCSIS, we put in, that's where the ISP is. That's where the ISP goes, the monitoring goes, all the service notes, the PUNs that we talked about, that state waiting list, that's in HCSIS. So they're going to be replacing HCSIS with something called ECM, which is Enterprise Case Management.
We love an acronym.
Don't they?
Man, oh man.
It is so confusing, and I am a little bit tongue-tied, and I have,
ECN, okay.
ECM. Enterprise Case Management. So now hopefully that is supposed to streamline the state of Pennsylvania. This way, if you're in multiple systems, people can see the information, that there's not somebody who's involved with the children and youth program, so their system is completely different than our system. So they can go in and then just find out demographics, for instance. It's just important to streamline things across demographics so people have the right contact information and so on. So it's supposed to really streamline, but that's what's coming down the pike. So I've heard ramblings that they're going to be going from outcomes back to goals, but I don't know if and when that's going to happen.
And what it's going to mean.
I don't know that either.
Okay, because again, it's a word from the IEP that came over to is in the ISP, but it's different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, and it might not happen. I think that different people have different ideas, but what you were speaking to is how difficult it was to wrap your brain around an outcome. And I think that's why they're talking about going back to goals, because it is really hard for the everyday person to wrap your mind around the outcomes versus goals. I think goals are more simplified, they're easy to understand, and they're easy for our guys to understand. So they're more straightforward. So I think that's why there is talk about going back to goals. And
it's also familiar for families, because when they think, I mean, it's not academic in the same, that kind of stuff, but it is the term that meant what it meant there, and it's a little more like what it's going to mean here, I guess, minus the academics.
Yes. So stay tuned.
All right.
Any advocacy agencies, self-advocates out there, tell them you want the goals back if that's what you think. But fingers crossed.
Okay. Well, and do you have any idea, like a time frame?
I don't. And like I said, I didn't read anything about that. That was rumblings that I heard through the grapevine.
Okay.
So I haven't come across anything that they said that ECM is going to be implemented, but I'm assuming that the ISP, everything's going to look a little bit different. So there's going to be a huge learning curve. I was the first class that was trained in HCSIS when it first came out. I was hired with the county in September of 2000, and HCSIS was implemented shortly after that. So I really was the very first class, at least in Delaware County, that was trained on that, I believe in the region. And this has been around for 24 years. So it's even people that have been around forever, now that we're going to learn a new system, it's going to be tough. So just be mindful of that when the new system comes out. There's going to be a little bit of a rocky road until we all learn, but we will get through it together. And hopefully it seems like they're trying their best to have everything streamlined and to be straightforward. And hopefully that new supports coordinators coming in will find it easier than in navigating something like HCSIS. So then this way they'll be more available to you instead of trying to navigate the system.
Okay. We are going to stop this podcast at this natural stopping point so that you can go, I don't know, let the dog out or get a drink of water or take a walk or whatever, and come back for part 2 of this podcast, because there's so much information that I kind of want to break it up for you listeners. So I want to learn more about getting the most out of the expertise of a supports coordinator, and I feel like that's happening. And I thank you, Jessica, for hanging in for one more episode. And to learn more about supports coordination organizations and that sort of generic whatever, but I also want to kind of learn a little bit more about your story on our next episode, and how you're in that position as supports coordinator, as well as a supports coordination organization, can be of help to families. And so listeners, I hope you will come back for part 2, but if you don't, I hope that was a whole bunch of information, because it kind of was, and I need to go let the dog out and go get a drink of water and come back. Thank you so much for spending time with us for part 1 of today's episode with Jessica Fenton, Director of Miracle Works, on our parallel paths, the future for our loved one with a disability, and for me. I hope you will like and follow the podcast, share it with family and friends, and I really hope you'll return to listen. Listen to the next episode, listen to all the episodes, and learn from more stories of people like you and me and our loved one with a disability on our parallel paths. Just so you remember, you're not alone. And I'll see you next time.